Let's talk about chronic illness, baby. It's been a little while since I did an update, and in 2021, I did a lot of medical testing, like reaching my out-of-pocket maximum so all further healthcare becomes free for the rest of the plan year level of testing. Well, as free as American healthcare ever is, you know? And I made some videos last year detailing the ins and outs of some of that testing. If you're here because you saw my heart monitor video or my colonoscopy video, hello, welcome, nice to meet you. My name's Caitlin. I've been struggling with chronic pain, fatigue, and other random symptoms since December 2011. I've done a lot of medical testing, and doctors still don't know what's wrong with me. Woohoo! Anyway, I hadn't gotten all the results from the heart monitor or colonoscopy when I made those videos, and I saw some people in the comments asking for updates or diagnoses. And because I know how incredibly important it is in the chronic and undiagnosed illness community to share what we learn about our bodies so that we might be able to help others find testing to have done or diagnoses to look into with your doctor, I thought it would be fun to give a little 2022 chronic illness update. Whew, okay, where to start? I literally still have a band-aid from where they took my blood today at the doctor's office. Well, if you watched my heart monitor video, then you probably know I'd been dealing with some symptoms like my heart randomly starting to race, dizziness, nausea, lightheadedness. My cardiologist sent me for a stress test, a heart ultrasound, and a 30-day heart monitor, and the results were normal. It's so weird having a mysterious illness because sometimes you want tests to come back showing issues because then there's a concrete reason for what you're experiencing. But on the other hand, it's good that my heart is healthy, so I guess that's one less thing to worry about. My cardiologist's theory is that because I take spironolactone for acne, which is a diuretic and a medicine used for heart failure, that what's maybe happening is it's dehydrating me and I'll have these sudden depletions of electrolytes. So my body and heart kind of goes, oh no, what's happening? And overreacts. I worked with my dermatologist who put me on the spironolactone to cut my dose in half to see if that would help. And I personally have kept the idea of keeping myself extra hydrated in mind during higher intensity activities and when I'm out in the heat, which is just kind of good practice anyway. And I would say a year out, it has helped. I wasn't entirely convinced it was the spironolactone at first because I experienced these symptoms before I was ever taking that medication. It just got worse when I was on it. But my dermatologist did agree that since it's a blood pressure medicine and I already generally have low blood pressure, then that was the likely culprit. So for now, my heart is healthy. I've had maybe 2 episodes like that in the last year versus when I was having 1 to 2 episodes a month at minimum. All right, so the second big issue I was dealing with last year and got testing done for was all things digestion related. I've had really terrible heartburn for years that I left untreated for some dumb reason, but more worryingly, I was oscillating between constipation and diarrhea, which is never a good sign. And also my stomach hurt just all the time. It was terrible. So I had a colonoscopy and an upper endoscopy last October. I got most of the results back by the time I released that video. So if you want some more in detail information, definitely watch that. But again, the results were mostly normal. I do have a hiatal hernia, which is causing at least some of my heartburn issues. And they did some biopsies on my esophagus that showed I have eosinophilic esophagitis, which is basically an allergy in the esophagus where certain allergens, like say food, can cause inflammation and abscesses. This is what Google says. I still have to see an allergist for that. For some reason, my gastroenterologist didn't automatically refer me to one, which my primary care doctor said they should have, and so that's still to come. But I have actually been thinking for a while that a lot of my symptoms and the way they come and go kind of make sense in terms of allergies. So ideally, I'd like to figure out what exactly I'm allergic to and see if cutting it out would help. Watch me be like allergic to air though. Speaking of symptoms that could be allergy related, the symptoms that I've had most consistently for the last 10 years and that kind of come and go with no real rhyme or reason are things like debilitating headaches, low-grade fevers, extreme dryness of my eyes, lips, and hands. I also experience what I like to describe as bone burning, which is essentially it feels like my bones are on fire. This is probably one of the worst symptoms I can have, and when it happens, I am just down for the count. I would say over the last year, as I've experimented with my diet and incorporated daily yoga, most of these symptoms have gotten less common, which I say that, and then tomorrow I will be knocked down with all of them. So I'm talking like going from having these symptoms 3 to 4 days per week to more like 3 to 4 days per month, if it's a really good month. Unfortunately, what ramped up were these throat ulcers, and oh, they were so bad. I've had mouth ulcers for years, canker sores, you know, but these mostly cleared up after my dentist suggested I try using toothpaste without SLS, or sodium lauryl sulfate, which apparently is commonly linked to canker sores. So I changed toothpaste, and I went from basically having at least one mouth ulcer at all times to rarely having them. But then in October of 2020, I started getting ulcers not on my gums or on the inside of my cheeks, but toward the back of my throat and around my tonsils, which made swallowing just awful, like swallowing glass. And I'd have these kind of cold-like symptoms with achiness, chills, etc. It was just a really bad time. I thought maybe it was from the heartburn and acid reflux, but I tried a low FODMAP diet and that didn't really make a difference. Then my rheumatologist thought it might be an immune response, so he had me try an immune suppressing medication for a bit, but that didn't really help either. All the while, these ulcers are getting more frequent and more painful, and I'm probably spending more than half a month in some level of pain because of them. Then this spring, I had to go on an antibiotic for something completely unrelated to the ulcers. And while I had a terrible time on the antibiotic because my stomach is weak, by the end of the antibiotic treatment, my ulcers had disappeared. My tonsils, where I had tonsil stones, had cleared up. And now it's been several months, and knock on wood, I've only had normal canker sore related mouth ulcers, and even those are minimal because of cutting out SLS. So I don't know what happened, medically speaking, but it sure kind of looks like the antibiotic helped stop whatever was causing the ulcers. The medical mysteries of my body, guys. It's wild. But anyway, I hope I'm done with that for now. We'll go back to that drawing board if we need to, but for now, yay, a win. Okay, finally, last subset of symptoms. Extreme fatigue, but also insomnia. Changes I've made here are trying really hard to go to sleep and wake up at the same time every day, kind of regulating my circadian rhythm. This was surprisingly hard for me because I've always been someone who goes too hard during the week and then crashes on the weekend and sleeps for 12 hours. And that's no way to live anyway. But I've also started struggling again with falling asleep sometimes, which I think is more of a depression anxiety issue than a symptom of another chronic illness. But it's a feedback loop of exhaustion that is not fun at all. Finally, the last bit of testing I did in 2021, and I didn't make a video about this because honestly, I was kind of weirdly embarrassed by it, was that I had a Neuropsych evaluation because I've been having pretty bad memory and concentration issues for the last several years. Like anyone would tell you, I have always been a very organized and attention to detail oriented person, not someone who procrastinates or has issues thinking creatively. And I feel like over the last 5 years or so, I have crashed and burned in that area of my life. And I felt like it was affecting my professional life, definitely my relationships. So even though it was hard to admit, I'm glad I did the testing. Now, having a neuropsych evaluation is the kind of testing you do to, say, be diagnosed with cognitive issues after a head injury, or ADHD, or autism. And I honestly came out thinking I'd be diagnosed with at least ADHD because I matched so many of the symptoms. So what did my neuropsychiatrist find? Well, I scored really high in visual memory related areas, which no surprise there, but was pretty impaired when it came to a lot of executive function and concentration tasks. Like there's a portion of the exam where she would tell me a story and then have me tell the story back to her with as many specific details as I can remember. And then she'd ask true or false questions about the story and so on. This was a really good illustration of exactly where I'm struggling because I hear the story, I think I'm processing the story, but the minute I have to open my mouth and relay the story back, there's nothing. Maybe like a woman went to the store and she forgot her wallet. Nothing specific at all. What was surprising, maybe disheartening, is that her assessment for the reason I have these cognitive issues is because of depression. Depression causes memory and concentration impairments and executive dysfunction. So again, there's a little feedback cycle. I struggle with concentration because of my depression, which makes me more depressed because I feel powerless to fix it, which then worsens the cognitive issues. It's the same thing with my depression and anxiety and chronic illness. Am I depressed because I'm sick, or am I sick because I'm depressed? The body and the brain are all interwoven, and they're far more connected than we treat it most of the time. And I don't have the answers. Not at all. But I did start seeing a therapist this year who I think is appropriately challenging me. And I'm going to be talking to my psychiatrist at my next appointment about maybe tweaking my meds some, because basically while I've been thinking things are good mental health-wise for me, and in comparison to where I have been, they are, but I'm also still not functioning at even close to a normal person level, unfortunately. And I'm out here judging myself on a normal person standard, which isn't helping anything. So I am excited for the future. Scared, obviously. My knee-jerk reaction is to always take as little drugs as possible, but at the same time, my brain and body ain't right. While doctors might not know quite what's wrong, they can all agree that what I experience physically and mentally is not normal for a 32-year-old, seemingly healthy woman. And while it's difficult and exhausting for me, I have to keep fighting and advocating for myself with various doctors to try and alleviate as much suffering as I can. Anyway, this was a very long, maybe boring video if you're not also someone who has dealt with chronic illness, so thanks for hanging in there with me. If you watched all the way through, then put a unicorn in the comments, the mascot of chronic illness, medical unicorns, you know, plus any thoughts, questions, ideas you might have about chronic illness as well. Let me know if you've experienced any of these symptoms. What have you found that works or doesn't work? I would love to know. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, turn on notifications, follow me over on Instagram, whatever you want to do to show some support. And I will see you guys later. Bye.